Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to Math here on BCPS-TV. My name is Mr. Tang, and I'm going to be walking you through a little bit of what we have for Lesson 1 of May 4th to May 8th. This week, we'll be taking a look at some measurement and data standards, specifically looking at line plots. Today, we're going to use mathematical tools and a given set of data in order to read and analyze line plots. So you might be sitting there asking yourself, what's a line plot? You may have learned this before, so this might be a refresher for you. And if you haven't, this will be a great opportunity to get some new learning in. Before we begin, let's take a look at our line plot that we have shown here. What do you notice and what do you wonder? Some examples of things you might notice is that it has a title, it is labeled, number of blocks, it has a number line from 1 to 7, counting by ones. It's got a bunch of dots on top of the number line. Some of the things you might be wondering are, what do the dots represent? Why does the number line only go to 7? A line plot takes a set of information or data and organizes it in a way that we can read in a more linear way, represented on a number line. The example that we're going to be going over in a little bit discusses a science class in which Abby and her classmates perform an experiment in which they use different amounts of vinegar. The table shown shows how much vinegar each person used. We can take a set of information or data and represent that same information on a line plot. Why do you think people would want to use this? What do you think are the benefits? Our Pearson video will go into more details about this. But before we move on to that, we can see our data points represented on the line plot. Each circle, or X as you'll see, is a representation of a data point. Let's move on to learn more about line plots.
How can you analyze data displayed in a line plot? A line plot, or dot plot, shows data along a number line. Each dot, or X, represents one value in the data set. In science class, Abby and her classmates performed an experiment in which they used different amounts of vinegar. The table shows how much vinegar each person used.
Wow, science is fun!
Why would you make a data table? What kind of information is recorded in the data table? You make a data table to organize and record information. This data table shows the cups of vinegar used by each person in an experiment. A line plot shows how often each value occurs. This line plot can be used to organize the amount of vinegar each person used. Read the line plot. What do the columns of dots represent?
Take some time to really think about this. What do you think the columns of dots represent? Also keep in mind that not all line plots use dots. Sometimes we use X's to represent those data points.
The columns of dots represent the amount of vinegar each student used. How many students took part in the experiment? Select your answer.
Keep in mind that if each of those dots represent those data points, what does the data represent?
21 students took part in the experiment. Analyze the data. Identify any outliers. An outlier is any value that is very different from the rest of the values. What is the outlier in the data set?
When looking for outliers, we're looking for any value that is very different from the rest of the group.
The dot above 3 is far from the rest of the dots in the line plot, so 3 is an outlier in this data set. Now you know how to analyze data displayed in a line plot.
All right, boys and girls, and now it's your turn to try. Start with Reteach page 12:1. The top has some vocabulary review, and the rest of the page has an opportunity for you to practice your new learning. Next, move to practice page 12:1. Start with the guided practice. Make sure you do numbers 4 and 5. When you're comfortable and ready, move on to your independent practice section. You will need to turn this into your teacher for grading. When you're done with that, feel free to do the rest of the practice page for extension and review. Well, great job today, 5th graders. Make sure to watch this video as many times as you'd like to help you analyze line plots. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and do the math.